Our speaker. Our speaker is a Launchpad member, and his name is Steve Maisel. He had 15 years as a career with Apple Computer, and then he decided, I don't know what happened to him, an epiphany, a breakdown, something. And he left all of that and went to Los Angeles to start a brand new career in casting. He became a casting director for TV and films, and had a very successful career in LA doing that. And then now he's back in Austin, but our film industry is so volatile that it's not a steady income. So he's trying now to recreate himself yet again, but not a huge leap. It's something very similar, and he's going to be a recruiter, a corporate recruiter. But he's going to talk to you about a couple things. Number one, making those kinds of transitions, making those kinds of changes, but also how similar the world of casting a film is to hiring a workforce. So let's give it up for Steve Maisel.
Well, thank you for allowing me to talk with everyone. It's nice to be here. I've been part of this group since, I think, August, and have learned a lot in this phase of the transition for me. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my transition from Apple into casting, what the experience was like for me as a casting director, and where things go from here. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my experiences. And I started out graduating with a marketing degree from a small state school in Northern California, and I was fortunate enough during my my university days to apply for an internship, and I did. I got it with Apple Computer. And at that time, computers were not in the home, so we were charged with going around the country to different shopping malls, setting up a 14-station display, and showing everybody what a Mac computer was. At that time, the Apple IIe was big, well, that 2C+. And so Mac was kind of a new technology, and we had a lot of fun as college interns going from city to city, showing people what they could do with the Mac computer. And that kind of got my interest going. I graduated, and then 2 weeks later landed a job with Apple in customer relations. So I dealt with the customers that called in, and in those days we only had a 90-day product warranty, and the number that they called was it was a toll number, so they had to pay for waiting 20 or 30 minutes to get to one of us, and that was a lot of excitement for people who were paying for those calls to complain about our products. But that has all changed. So I did that for a few years, and had a great opportunity to get into sales with Apple. They opened up a site here in Austin in 1992, and I was one of the first of 700 members to move here and open up the site. And at first I sold into resellers, so I was responsible for the New York and New Jersey resellers who sold Mac computers to consumers, and had helped them kind of increase their business. And about a year after that, I moved into education sales. And that was really exciting for me because now I got to work with K through 12 school districts, also in New York and New Jersey mostly, to help them kind of incorporate new technology into their curriculum. And so that was really nice because I've dealt with school teachers in small towns and superintendents in big towns, and really learned a lot about how education can be enhanced with computer technology. So that was a lot of fun. After that, I became a sales manager for the team, and managed about 18 sales reps doing the same work that I had just completed. And then I got an opportunity to move back to Cupertino, and I did some operations work for a while, and eventually landed as a product marketing manager for the Apple Protection Plan. So we didn't have a good service and support warranty product until the Apple Care Protection Plan was rolled out, and I was one of the members that helped roll that out to the country and then later internationally. So that was a lot of fun. I learned about product marketing there. And during that time, I had been at Apple about 15 years. I decided that I wasn't really in love with what I was doing. And I started to kind of ask the question, well, what should I do now? I bounced around the company, obviously, for quite a few years, and I just wasn't really loving my work. And it became more of a chore to kind of get up and do the work that I was asked to do. So I took about a year And I kind of started to analyze what would make me happy. And I actually took a class with the community college in Cupertino called Career Action Center. There was a kind of like Click Now class, and it was about 6 weeks long. And we did a whole bunch of self-assessments, very much like the Design and Focus class that's offered here in Austin. And it was great because I got to kind of really ask the questions that I hadn't really paid attention to, which was, what do I want to do, and what do I do well? And through these assessments in the class and evaluations of others, I kind of learned maybe I'm not in the right job. And I've always secretly wanted to be an actor. So Kathy mentioned, how did I move from Apple to casting? But I really thought it would be great to be on stage and act for people. I had a little experience in high school where I did some community theater, and I thought it was great. I loved it. But at the time that I made this transition, I didn't have enough confidence in myself as an actor. I maybe didn't have enough experience to go and move to LA and just do acting as a full-time job. So I wasn't really sure that that was the right choice. But what I did identify with is working with actors. And that's when casting kind of came into the picture. And I transitioned over time by setting kind of small goals. And I figured that I couldn't really get from A to Z, so I planned out over 3-month increments certain goals that I was going to achieve to learn more about the casting industry. And that meant a lot of kind of online research. I called people out of the blue and started asking them questions about what their experience with casting was. And I learned a lot over time, but I realized that taking smaller steps allowed me to kind of get to where I ultimately wanted to be. So I quit Apple, in March of 2002, and within a few days I moved to LA. And the way I did that was I had gone on a trade show for Apple to New York. And when I was there, I went out with some friends. We were at kind of a bar in New York, and I saw this group of people kind of really having a good time, and we started talking. The person that I started talking to in that group was a casting director in Los Angeles. So I thought that was kind of interesting that I was looking into getting into that world. I kind of picked his brain, and he was thinking I was kind of an irritation because he was trying to stop talking about work, and all I wanted to do was talk about work. But we exchanged information, and we sent emails back and forth. He, 3 or 4 months after we met, asked me, "Hey, are you in LA? I'm looking for a roommate." And I said, "No, I'm not in LA, but I'll be in LA in 3 months." And he said, "Well, if you're here, let me know, because I might have a room. If it's not rented out, maybe you can rent the room here." And that's exactly what happened. 2 days after I moved to LA and was in the house, he said, "I've got this play that I'm casting, and I have to leave town. I want you to go in and take over the casting session for me." I thought, okay, that's fantastic, but I had no idea what I was going to do. So he kind of gave me a 5-minute speech about what to do, and I was very nervous but very excited. And so 2 days after being in LA, I walked into the audition room with the producers and the directors of the play, and was basically kind of orchestrating the audition session. Blew my mind that happened. And I guess that worked out so well because he had asked me to stay on even after he got back to kind of assist him. And I found that through that process, I was able to meet more people through agencies, through actors themselves, through friends of friends. And I joined a tennis club at the time to kind of have fun with tennis. I love to play. And because I was in LA, everybody was in the industry. So it was a great way for me to kind of hear other people's perspectives and what they do in the industry. And one of the people that I played tennis with in that league got me to informational interview with a casting office that did TV, and they did Malcolm in the Middle at that time. Wound up that I interned for them for quite some time, and became a casting assistant with them eventually. So it was really nice that I kind of just went into this, met as many people as I could, and learned from everybody that knew what they were talking about. So I had to, going into this transition, I knew that I was going to be learning a lot that I hadn't experienced before, and that meant maybe having to volunteer and work for free for a while, which is what I did. And then I kind of left casting and went into a production assistant. So I was on the set of Crossing Jordan and helping everybody come in for their roles and get the set all ready. And I was part of the set decoration department, and I was running, renting equipment and purchasing props for the stage. And I figured as much as I can learn about the industry, then I would know where to land. After that, I became a production assistant on the set of a show called The Handler, which was a CBS series. And that allowed me to work with the actors and the assistant director team to kind of make sure that the actors were where they were supposed to be, they were on set, they were working. I had to bring them back and forth to their trailer. I ran the walkie-talkies. So I did a lot of things I wasn't planning to do, but I kept an open mind and I learned a lot from people around me. Eventually, I got back into casting, and I worked for a lot of different casting offices, learned their styles, learned what I liked about what they did, and I also learned what didn't work or what I thought could be better. And that became I figured that was my education. After about a year of doing that, I started to get paid for the work I was doing, which was nice. And that's when I began working with actors. And while I was having a full-time job in the casting office, I went to the universities, UCLA and USC, and talked to their acting programs, because a lot of those students create their own films, and they produce those films, they act in those films, and many of them needed actors to act, and they didn't know where to get those actors, so I thought I would go in there and help them out. And a lot of my first projects were student films. I didn't get any money, but I got a lot of experience, and I met a lot of actors that way. I started auditioning on my own, and that's where I kind of tested what I knew and what I didn't know. One of the actors that I met in the student film, his name was Reed, came in for one of the roles, and we hit it off. Very nice guy. We kept in touch after the audition. He wound up not getting that job. But what happened was, a few months after that job, he emailed me and said, "Hey, I just met this director who's looking for a casting director for a film in Austin." And at this time I was in Los Angeles. So what was nice is that he made that introduction happen. I wound up interviewing for that casting job, got the job, came here for 2 or 3 months to help cast the film after I cast the main actors in LA. And it turned out that that person, Reed, came in to audition for one of the roles in that project. Reed actually got one of the roles, one of the leading roles in the film. So it was kind of nice because he got me work and then I got him work. And that's kind of how the industry works. Everybody kind of helps each other. So eventually I moved into casting associate position, which is like a junior casting director. And I started working for a lot of Nickelodeon shows. Your kids would probably know Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious, those shows on Nickelodeon. And I was an associate for many different casting directors that were well known to Nickelodeon. One of the pilots that I did was called The Fresh Beat Band. And this was a show that was geared towards preschoolers. So we had to find actors that could entertain preschoolers. That meant a lot of comedy acting, a lot of physical comedy, a lot of singing, because it was a musical show. They also had to play instruments, and they had to dance, because we had a lot of our songs written for the show that required them to dance. So I was fortunate enough to be with a great casting director who was very good about letting me in the room to audition actors. I learned a lot through that experience. The pilot got picked up, and after that, the show went into series, which meant that we were going to have castings every week for new episodes throughout the season. But the show was such a low-budget show that many of the series regulars, the people that were in every episode, were already cast, and they were just looking for backup dancers, maybe one-line roles here or there. They didn't feel like they needed a full-time casting director, so I became the casting associate for the show without anybody else. It was kind of like my first office. And it was great. We were on the Paramount lot, and I got to audition actors. The second season, when it came back, promoted me to a casting director, and that's when we had regular roles, recurring roles that would come in each week for the different episodes, or sometimes guest starring roles. So that's when I became a full-fledged casting director, and we did that for 4 years on the Paramount lot. A lot of fun. There's a video which I guess I can show you guys afterwards. Just I created I was asked by the industry.
You want to do the video?
Sure, we can do the video. But before we do that, I'll just explain what it is. So we have this service called Breakdown Express. It's where all of the actors submit for roles that we're casting for. So I put out a notice every time there's a new project. I explain what the show is and what the role responsibilities are. That's where the agents and managers and actors submit their resumes and their headshots. It's an electronic kind of system, and I can quickly go to that particular project and look at all of the different actors that have submitted, and making a first impression. Many of those actors I didn't know, but when we did have the submissions, I would get 1,000, sometimes 2,000 submissions for one role on one show for one episode. So when you have 4 or 5 roles or 10 roles, you're dealing with thousands and thousands of people that are going for the same position. So I quickly had to kind of look through, and the headshot in this case was always the first yes or no. And I can quickly scan a page of 100 headshots and decide very quickly whether they were eligible to come into audition. If I liked what I saw and I didn't know them, then I could look at their resume to see if they had the background to go for the position. So I eliminated very quickly. But this particular service interviewed me to talk about my experiences in casting the show called The Fresh Beat Band. And it was something that went out to actors and producers and directors in the community to help them understand what they can do or know when they get an audition for casting directors. So it's just a quick little blip that was put out.
Hi, I'm Steve Maisel, and I'm the casting director for the Fresh Beat Band. Welcome to Casting Stories. My casting story involves casting a recurring guest star for the 3rd season of the Fresh Beat Band, where Harper, our pizza owner, is one of the funniest characters in that he's great with physical comedy. He's also musical because he sings, and he dances. So you can imagine the audition process for the show. And one particular actor came in, very, very tall guy. And at first I didn't think much of what he could perform, but as the audition started to go, I couldn't contain myself. I actually broke out laughing during the audition process, so much so that I couldn't even read with him. I had to start and stop 3 or 4 times in order to get the take done. I was a little embarrassed about it, but this actor was so incredibly funny. Every time he came in to read for me, I had the same problem. It was a mental thing I couldn't get over. And it was rare because I hadn't usually broken during somebody's audition scene like that. He came in for producers, and during the producer session, he decided to show us that he could do pratfall. He self-imposed a pratfall during the middle of the scene, which shocked everybody in the room, and made everyone laugh and shout and cheer so much so the scene had to stop. Surprised everybody. In fact, he then went on to show us that he could do a backwards pratfall. Did that as well. That gentleman actually got the part, and he is now on the show in the 3rd season of the Fresh Beat Band and happily doing pratfalls as part of his character. So just goes to show you, if you have a special talent, bring it on. We're looking for it.
So that talks about a little bit about how you stand out as an actor and how you get the job. For those that don't know, pratfalls are kind of what Dick Van Dyke did at the beginning of his show, where he kind of fell over the stool. This actor that I was talking about for one of the regular roles is he did a self-imposed fall very quickly, forward and backwards, and that's what a pratfall is if you don't know. And when the producers and the director of the show and the network executives were looking at this guy, they originally wanted a short, older Asian woman for the role. And this guy was 6'4" and very big guy, and Caucasian. So it wasn't at all what the network wanted, but with a little persuasion, I think they wanted to go with this guy because they saw the comedy that he can do. And as I said, because he had such a winning audition and he did things that were unexpected, and appreciated that they built in some of his physical comedy into the role of the character that wasn't originally created. So for actors, they stood out when they could offer something unusual that other actors couldn't offer. And that usually would come off in either their headshot. If I didn't know them and I saw their headshot, I thought that there was something captivating about the photos that they used. Or maybe there was some experience they had in their resume that was unusual. And because I was looking for actors that could sing and that could dance and play an instrument, usually actors could do one or two things, but not all of those things. And I could quickly find out. I felt like I was an American Idol judge many times in the auditions because many of them had to sing. And on one-on-one, I had to get that kind of feedback right away, you know, when it was going well and when it wasn't. So after 15 years of doing casting, I realized that this was a great career. I really loved it. I had a great time. But I realized also that living in Los Angeles and working as an independent contractor, moving from project to project, could be very challenging. And I realized that my work life was very active and busy when I had a job, but it wasn't when I didn't. And my social life, I usually worked 70, 80 hours a week, so I didn't have much time to socialize with friends and family. And I realized that there was an inequity of what I was doing with my time. So that's when I started to reevaluate the next version of my life and realized I love Austin so much after being here in the 90s that I wanted to come back, and I did make the decision to come back here. I was hoping to continue casting here in Austin, and I actually did get a film that I did cast in 2015 called The Conway Curve. It's a small independent feature, and that worked out really well. But I realized that with the tax incentives being taken away for production companies to come here and film, there is nowhere to work. And I started to look at my next career path. When I moved here to work at a pharmaceutical sales company, become their operations manager. And I did that for a while. It was a small company, and then that company folded. And I moved into operations work for another company that hired employees to go into electrical plants to clean their plants while they weren't in high season. And then that company folded. So it kind of led me to where I am here, and I figured that the next step for me, because of my skills in casting, would be in corporate recruiting. So I'm concentrating my efforts now on finding a great corporate recruiting job. I figure with my interviewing skills with candidates and the corporate background that I had previously, it would be a nice mix for that. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, and just thought I'd share my story with you, tell you about what I've done in casting and how I got out of casting, how I got back into Austin, and hopefully things will come together within corporate recruiting. So that's pretty much where I am now. I just completed the Design and Focus class at the Job Seekers organization, and that really helped me to kind of fine-tune what career I wanted to go into next. And again, it kind of let me look at my values, my interests, my aptitudes, my skills, and for those that are in transition, it's a great, I recommend that as a possible solution for you to learn more. So that's about it. Any questions? Yeah.
So the gentleman that did the prank calls, did you first look at him, even though he wasn't an Asian woman, did you look at him because he could sing and dance? What made you even think about him, like he was so different than what you were really going for?
That's a great question. One of my styles in casting was to consider a wider audience beyond the parameters that were directed on. So when I was looking at all the submissions, of course I was concentrating on older Asian women, but I was also looking at all ethnicities. I was looking at all sizes of characters because I didn't know where the audition process would lead us. I was going to honor the request from the network to provide a whole bunch of funny Asian women, and I did that. But I also wanted to be prepared for something else in case they decided to go a different direction. My style was to kind of be prepared and show them a lot of different things to open up their minds, because sometimes when they create a character, they have a very specific idea of who that character should be. And my style was to always show that image, but also different options in case they decide throughout the creative process that there's a better way to go. And that's why I considered Shane, the 6'4" gentleman, who I didn't know who he was, but his picture was so captivating. I turned over and looked at his resume and saw he had a lot of great comedy experience. And one of the things I was having a hard time was finding the comedy timing and the comedy skill. So I thought, I've got to bring this guy in because he's really strong with comedy. And within minutes, I could always tell right away whether an audition was going to be really good or not so good based on their entrance into the room. And right away he had me laughing, like before the door closed. He fumbled with the door, and for him it was all on purpose to kind of showcase what his comedy was. For me it looked very natural in that he was just that character. But I considered him because I wanted to show the network and the executives what palette of options they have. And rather than just go with what they only wanted, I wanted to show them other options, and I think that's why it worked with having Shane come in the room and surprise them. Did that answer your question?
Yes, and I have another question that's kind of related. Do you think that LA is more conservative regarding like colorblind casting and that sort of stuff, whereas Broadway with Hamilton, you know, they totally cast people that could do the part essentially without having.
Yeah.
Is Broadway a little bit more open to that sort of stuff than LA? Is LA more conservative?
You know, I think that the trend has been that they're really opening up to all kinds of interesting characters with all kinds of looks. I think in earlier days they really did kind of pigeonhole into a certain kind of a look. But one of the big pushes that we've had over time is that they really wanted to bring a diverse cast and have all kinds of different characters based on different ethnicities and different sizes and different ages. So with almost every project that I had, if the requirement was that we find a cast Caucasian woman, I would always bring in all ethnicities. Because sometimes I would surprise the director and the producers with a different idea that was better for the role than just the one choice that they had in mind. So I think the movement over time has been that they're really opening it up to all kinds of ethnicities. And I'm not sure about Broadway. I guess it would depend on the content and the material that they're casting for. Sometimes that dictates who we see and who we bring in, because I have less experience with theater. But I know that with TV and film, they're really opening up to all considerations. Yes?
You mentioned a class or a program that you went to at the very end of your talk.
Yes.
What was that again, and where did you do that?
There's another job club called Job Seekers. It's in Northwest Austin or Cedar Park. And I know Kathy's, Craig Foster is the executive director there. One of the classes they teach is a class called Design and Focus. It's a 4-week program, and each week the class gets together in smaller groups. They do class activities and after class activities. That's where you learn kind of what's important to you in your workplace or your personal values. It helps you focus on the interests that you may have, the passions. It also looks at the skills, the aptitudes that you have through a number of assessment tests and class activities. They really kind of help you see where your next transition or where your next path is when it comes to your career. Sometimes people leave one job and go right into the same kind of work. Other times, leaving one job means an open opportunity to explore different career paths. And this class really, through its exercises, allows you to pinpoint or help you discover what that next path could be. And they teach it, I think it's twice a year.
I think so. I think it costs $100. Is that right?
Yes, actually, for me, I paid $119 for the 4 weeks. And then after you get a job and you have income coming in, you pay another $119 for the course compensation. But they just finished it a couple weeks ago, so it may be a few more months before they offer it again. Yeah.
So when you were going from 1.0 to 2.0, I noticed you were working for free a lot. So did you take a survival job, or did you have money from that fruit company to sustain you?
I lived off of the money that I had in my bank account because I had to really make myself available to do the work. And many of the jobs that I did were 12-hour work days, so I didn't have the time to have a survival job. It really was one of those things where, you know, I took odd jobs on the weekends and things to walk dogs or watch houses, things like that, to make a little money. But most of it was, and I had planned for that transition. I knew that I was going to be working for free for quite a while. And eventually that money ran out and I had to actually make some money. But by then I was being paid for the work I was doing. Yes?
What do you feel is key that would help you in your transition from one career to a completely different one? Because a lot of times employers, people get stuck. They're not that creative. They look, oh, this, and they want to keep you in your previous jobs.
Yes.
How could you?
I'm actually experiencing that right now. I've had to kind of refocus or reimagine my previous work. You know, it's easy to say that I'm a casting director in the TV industry. Everybody knows what that is. But I'm kind of branding that as more like a recruiter. You know, there are many steps within or similarities within the casting process that match over to corporate recruiting. And so I think what I need to do now is really talk about my knowledge and experience over the last 15 years as a casting director. There are some skills and some initiatives that I had to take on that carry over to the recruiting world. And I think it's a challenge to kind of present a picture of, yes, I don't have the corporate recruiting experience, but I have recruiting experience in another industry. And those skills will carry over to the corporate recruiting. So it's about positioning, I think, and it's about how you communicate your value, even though you don't have the practical experience in that industry. And that's what I'm working through right now myself, but I think that's you just have to show them that you are valuable given your experience, even though it doesn't exactly match up.